After a time, Ingtar spoke again firmly. There has to be a price, Rand. There is always a price. Perhaps I can pay it here. Ingtar, it is every man's right, Rand, to choose when to sheathe the sword, even one like me. Go, Rand, Ingtar said. Take the horn where it belongs. I always knew a Merlin should have given you this charge, but all I ever wanted was to keep my nation whole, to keep us from being swept away and forgotten. I know, Ingtar. Rand drew a deep breath. The light shine on you, Lord Ingtar of House Shinoa, and may you shelter in the palm of the Creator's hand. He touched Ingtar's shoulder. The last embrace of the mother welcome you. Thank you, Ingtar said softly. A tension seemed to go out of him, confident, relaxed, content. Rand turned and found Hurin staring at both of them. It is time for us to go. But Lord Ingtar does what he has to, Rand said sharply. But we go. Hello everyone, Roosble is here, and today we're talking about world-building religion and how a well-organised faith system can not only help drive your storylines, but provide your players with interesting new motivations for their characters. So let's crack on, shall we? Ridiculous. Hello. So what's going on here? First off, a little bit of clerical stuff. That little excerpt that you've just seen is from The Great Hunt, which is a part of the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. And the purpose of that video is just to highlight good storytelling, right? So in the scene we have a character who'd formerly given over to the shadow. For those of you who haven't read Wheel of Time, the character had given over to the shadow not because he was evil, but in an effort to save his kingdom, right? Save his people. And that scene there, he sacrifices himself to save the main characters. He realizes that there needs to be redemption for him, and there's a touching moment where he's offered redemption, and they talk about the mother, right? And that he says thank you because in that moment he believes that there's a chance for his redemption in the afterlife, and that's just an example of how quality religion in your story can shape the story and give your characters an opportunity to have a deeper meaning to their character. Imagine a scenario where one of your characters sacrifices himself to save the party because they believe that's what their god wants them to do. So there we go. For anyone who's new to the stream, hello and welcome. Thank you for joining. This is only the second stream, but it's kind of the first in a series where we're going to work together. Me and you. Anyone who wants to join in, we're going to go through all the process of designing our own D&D campaign, and we're starting right from the top with world building. And the idea being we're going to create a campaign eventually that either you can use out of the box or we can use as an example for you to learn the process of creating your own campaign. So you can strip parts of it, use most of it, use the whole thing as is, or just use the experience that you've had with us here as a little community to build your own. And that the purpose is just to encourage people to take to DMing. Dungeons & Dragons is a great game. I love it. I don't play enough of it. And for me, my goal here, aside from creating a bit of a community, is to get better at DMing myself. And that's through discussion and through practice. So we're going to get some practice world building together. And I want there to be, this is an open forum of people who are interested in the game. If there's anything you want to learn, if there's anything you want to ask the community and get some feedback for, go right ahead. We've got chat. We can have a discussion if there's anything you want to go over or anything you're not sure about. So where do we begin? If you're deciding to DM for the first time, or this isn't the first time, maybe you haven't designed your own campaign yet, then it can be an overwhelming idea, right? The prospect of creating your own entire universe in which to set a story is mind-boggling, right? There's so many things to think about, and my personal process is I would like to start outwards and work in and try and think about the largest concepts first, because you'll find that all of your larger concepts like religion are going to help you to then influence your decisions later down the line. So your society is going to be influenced a lot by religion. So if we have a rough idea how the world was created right at the start, then we can use that to help make decisions later on, which we'll go over when we get there. But we're going to start with religion because that's where I normally start, and hopefully we're going to work together. I have some ideas that I've pre-prepared because we're starting off with maybe not so many participants, and I've got something on rails that I can throw down if we haven't got much feedback. But hopefully we can get some feedback from people in chat, and we can all work on this together, and that'd be even better than me just using what I've got. So if you've got an idea, you don't need to put your hand up. Just throw it in the chat. Contribute. It's a collaborative process. So what you're looking at here, I have taken a map that I've already drawn because I think it helps to have an idea of the setting. This isn't entirely necessary. You can use a map that already exists, which is essentially what I'm doing here. It just happens to be one that I drew. But you could take a map of Mordor and decide you're going to set a campaign in Mordor, and that doesn't mean that all of the races and characters have to be the same as they are in Middle-earth, right? All I'm trying to say is if you don't have the capability to draw a map, then you don't need to. You don't even need a map, realistically. You can go without one, but it does help the players visualize what's going on and it helps you keep track of what's north, south, and east and west of wherever you are. Just having an idea in your head where settlements are in relation to each other is pretty handy. And because I don't think that being able to create a map on your own is essential to the process, we're just going to use one that I already have. And you can use this yourself if you would like. It's there to use. So we've got a world which is a little bit further down the list, right? But it helps to visualize what we're looking at while we're making the decisions, and it looks nice on the overlay, something for you to look at. So it's going to sit there, and it'll need a name at some point. So just have a think about what you would call this world if it was up to you, because we can do a poll on that at a later date. And with that, saying that all of the settlements and things, any part of this map we can rename. So great colour scheme. Thank you kindly. I like green for grass and blue for sea. I'm a altruist, right? So that's that. I think. Barring any questions anyone might have, I think that puts us in a good position to sort of start the overall task at hand, which is creating a religious structure for our world. So something that I've had conflict with when doing this in the past is you often find that you want to have different religions for different races, or multiple religions for the same race. And in the game, mechanics-wise, all religions that you decide to place in the world have abilities for the characters. Which, in a roundabout way, what I'm trying to say is, if you create a religious structure it has to be in a way real, because if a cleric decides, if you create 3 religions and one's like an elvish religion, one's a human, and one's a dwarvish one, and you get 3 players, one's an elf, one's human, one's a dwarf, and they all want to be a cleric, they're all going to be able to do magical things using their faith in terms of game mechanics. So I've got hung up in the past on trying to work out how all of the religions can all be true at the same time, and you don't need to do that. This is like straight out the bat. We don't need to justify all of the religions. It can help to, and if you can think of a clever way to like make them all work, like a pantheon, right? That's an option. But I've in the past tried to link all the religions together and tried to work out how to make them all be in their own way correct. But you don't need to do that, because the players are never going to discover how the world came to be. So you can decide how the world came to be in 3 different ways, and you don't have to justify it, right? Just leave that one behind the screen and let it be what it is, right? It's optional. If you want to work it out, you can work it out, but don't get hung up on it, I guess is what I'm saying. Every world needs a cult. That's true. We're going to have cults for sure. Maniacal. So we don't. We don't need to justify our religions. We don't need to justify any religions. It's faith is faith, right? That's the whole point. If you had to justify it, then it's not faith, I guess. We're getting wildly like off topic, I guess, but that's fine. None of this needs to be relevant in a real world, right? So let's jump in, I guess. I've just mentioned like one option that we have is to have a pantheon. You know, like you have the like Roman Greco, like there's multiple gods, or and I'm going to show my ignorance here, but Hinduism, I believe, right? It's the same. It's a pantheon, but they're all in theory the same gods that splits down, right? We could do something like that, or we could have like a more traditional, like there's one traditional, more Christian, I guess, like single god, or we can have a few related gods, so that we have a different god for each race. That's like one easy way to have different faiths. What do we want? What's everyone feeling? Because I think I had in my little like I've taken some stuff that I'd had worked on in the past that's just been sat around and hasn't been used, and I was leaning towards having like a few religions, blind faith, few religions. I like a few religions. So I'm gonna just go ahead and just start jotting stuff down, right? And maybe even a semi-Greek as well as like an Ocean god. Yeah, a couple. Thank you very much. A couple, yeah. Like more gods is always more fun because it gives your players more options, right? One overarching god, child demigods. Would your demigods be able to like visit the earth? That's always interesting. Like your demigods can walk amongst us, kind of thing. That's always interesting. And you have players then want to try and find like avatars for their god and stuff. I like that. Yeah. So part of this process, let's remember like nothing I write down is ever going to be cement. Like we can go back over things and we'll naturally like put ideas together and think like, oh no, that's great. Like we can delete stuff and replace it. One overarching on child demigods. Let's start with that. I like that. Let's religion. So we're gonna go with one true god with children that are demigods, right? And then you can create this interesting like confliction between races where like or like religious groups that they all might believe that their demigod is the only god, right? It could be that let's have a I like the idea. Let's try this, right? As an idea. Let's have elves understand, right? Because your elves are, you know, this is tropey as hell, but you know, your old wise elves understand that all the gods are, and they worship the lady. There we go. Let's go with that. They worship the lady. That's what we're calling her for now. One true god. We'll give her a suitably elvish name later on, right? And then our other races. Do we want the races to worship different demigods, or would you have separate, or would you have like overlap where there's multiple demigods for multiple races? Is that sometimes it depends on what sort of game you want, really. But like having one god for dwarves helps you write, in terms of world building, it helps you write like a lot of the questions are answered for you. When you sit down and say we need a god for a demigod for the dwarves, like it's a lot easier to think of what a demigod for the dwarves would be, because again you become really tropey and focus on like the things that dwarves think is important, right? And or we can go for like overlapping. We can set a number of gods and just write them all, and then decide later on which races you're likely to find churches for which gods in. Let's have a. I'm going to wait to see what you think of that, because you know this is cooperative. It's collaborative. I could sit and write this on my own, but I could use what I've written, which we've already diverged from, right? But then it won't be as fun. We won't be doing it together, right? One per race, but then overlap. A demigod represents a certain thing, right? Let's see, or pumpkins. I think having at least one race that has a totally separate religion would be good. Nothing creates natural conflict more than religious discourse, causing political potential friction. Overlap. I'm seeing. So what about this? So we have separate gods, right? So we have a traditionally like dwarvish god, but obviously there's no reason why there wouldn't be human followers of that god. But you'd find it more prevalently in dwarvish society. And then we can have, and I think it'd be fun to have like an outlander that's like a your god of pranks type, your tricksy god. That's just an outlier. That's no particular. Right, there's no particular friend of any of the races, and has a very small following across the board. But then we can have those demigods have separate realms as well, right? So we can have pumpkins. I feel pumpkins would be more human than anything else, right? Got that like, you know, that traditional medieval farmer vibe, right? Like worshipping a pumpkin god. Yeah, god of top quality banter. Exactly. We need god of top quality banter. Yeah, so like we can have the gods have like almost like their own pantheon, right? So if the gods can, maybe this is something that we understand as the DM, that our demigods have their own responsibilities under that pantheon, and they're able to manifest themselves in the human, in the mortal realm as like lower level deities of those specific domains, right? So our humanish god demigod can manifest itself as the pumpkin lord, right? And he probably appears mostly around Halloween, right? So let's have a crack at that. Other races have a prominent god. Prominent demigod. Type in under pressure. This is awful. Other races have prominent demigods. However, there is often overlap between the races. However, there. Do you know how often I type te? Like, I type faster than I can think a lot of the time. And I type as te all the time, and I'm sure people think I'm doing it as a joke, and I'm not. Overlap between the races, and each demigod is responsible for a plethora of subdomains, and is able. Each demigod is responsible and is able to manifest themselves in the mortal realm as a low-level deity. Yeah. For these domains. That way you can create like additional friction where like you have your simple farming folk in a village might not worship the demigod because they don't believe in all that like overly religious mumbo jumbo. But what they know is there's a pumpkin god, and if they light a candle to the pumpkin god every night, their pumpkin harvest is bigger than normal. And so then you get like these hyper focused, and this is when you start getting like cults and stuff, right? You get this hyper focused core group of people who really believe in one of these smaller, lower level deities, right? But not necessarily. Maybe they go to church and pay lip service, but they're not really overly fussed about the demigods. I like it, and let's not forget the demigod of top quality banter. Alright, so how many gods do we want? Do we want one for each race and then a couple more, or as soon as demigod they could go about fulfilling their duties differently? Oh god, yeah. Yeah. They'd be like, you'd have your nurturing types that like care about like. I always hate this when you're talking about D&D. You want to say words like humanity, and it's not relevant because like you mean everyone, not just human. But that care about living things, right? And and maybe they're like more hands-on with helping people. And then you have other ones that just see like their role as like as to protect the thing that they have a domain over, and probably often finds that civilizations are an affront to that. One for each race, for sure, at least. So every race in D&D. Are we going traditional player's handbook, or are we like expanding? You're gonna have to shout ones out when I miss them. So we've got human, dwarf, elf. We won't have half elf, I guess, because that's not. It's like a subspecies, right? Maybe there is one. I don't know. You tell me. And I mean that. Just shout it out. Halfling. Some races could worship the same god, but a different interpretation. Yeah. All right. I'm liking this. We're heading in a human, dwarf, elf, gnome, halfling, orcs, which will include half orcs. Wow, the pressure's real. I literally wrote this list out like a few days ago. Wouldn't half elf be a mashup god? The demigods. Maybe the demigods can breed, and there's like and when half elves were first created, like it happened because there was a half elf demigod created, a quarter god created, right? So tiefling's a weird one, right? Dragonborn, Tabaxi, Furbolg. Oh yeah, Herbolg. Furbolg. Hannah, you're gonna have to help me because you're definitely watching this, and you're definitely. Maybe there isn't half elves, but I think there is, and actually half watching. Maybe there isn't half elves. Yeah, maybe there isn't a half elf god, but like they've created a demigods can breed. Does that mean there's a chance of them? Oh god. Whoa! Put a pin in that because maybe we get maybe that's how we get like a real chaotic entity. Maybe a fully fledged god is born from from breeding of demigods, and now we've got an evil god, right? That's just outright bad. I'm going to do this. I'm going to have missed some. But the reason I'm asking Hannah is because she'll definitely remember all that. I've got Tabaxi and Furbolg, but like, what are the extra ones? What am I doing? Dwarf, elf, halfling, human, dragonborn, gnome. I'm sure this is thoroughly exciting for you. Half elf, half orc, tiefling. I got all of the player's handbook ones, so I pat myself on the back. Tabaxi, Furbolg. Oh god, tall. Oh, drow. Yeah. But like, would they be? I think drow potentially follow. Like, we create our evil god, practically emotionless. The demigod's emotional side comes from the emotional side. I like that a lot. War between the gods. Yeah. We've got to have a war between the gods, right? What are you fighting for? If you like, if all the gods are like cooperative, then religion can't be like a point of contention because, like, I mean, it can, you know, but oh no, I'm spilling coffee. Got like the gifts around and stuff. We're gonna stick there for now, right? So if we do these and then we can add a couple of extra ones, right? So human demigod, right? Are our demigods gendered? I like the idea that the god as a whole, like what I'm calling the lady, right? I tend to go for like a female representation because you get the idea that if the world is created by a god, that they've like birthed the world as a whole, and that it's not necessarily like a female, but people's interpretation of it they'd probably like imprint a female status onto it because they believe that they've been birthed by it, and they see that like mother-child relationship with the god. And if in reality, if it's a god and it doesn't manifest itself in a mortal way anyway, it's probably not gendered, but they would consider it to be female. Gendered demigods, yes, but then I like the idea of having like a couple that aren't, right, or a couple that are like ungendered, because that would like, it's an interesting like character point. Like you get different like temperaments and stuff when you start to look at like either like non-gendered or like pan-gendered or like, yeah. So adding more mystery. I want more. Right. So human is that? Do we have a gendered human god? They could be perceived as being gendered, but actually aren't. That's beyond. Yeah, like yeah. It's like I said, like it's a human thing to like look at like a god and be like, it must have a gender because we have a gender. And especially if we have decided that they can like interbreed or like that again, like this demigod thing, like the higher tier of god is composed of the demigods, right? It's not actually like a mother and children. It's probably more likely that they form. It's a Voltron. They form together to make the god. But like it's a very like again we say it's a humanistic thing, but it'd be like a part of being on a mortal coil, right? To want to imprint like a human standard onto the gods, so that you'd start to perceive the demigod and like god relationship as being mother and child, right? So we're getting very Greek. This is very like Greek pantheon type, right? Like the idea that like gods breed and stuff is like so bizarre. Like you get like the Urshinids and stuff that like create demigods with the gods, but like you want to assume that that's through breeding, but like the Earth was like created from sorry, like humans were created from the Earth and the sky breeding, right? And it's like how is that? Anyway, I'm going off topic. Greek mythology is great. Let's go human. So this is where we start to look at like racial traits, right? And we think like humans are like similar to a monarchy. Human god should be male. Yeah, because we've decided that. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we're getting very political, and I think we're staying on the correct side of. So like yeah, like in the same vein, like it's a very humanistic thing for them to have decided that the gods are male, right? We've imprinted that on them, so it's like a male, and probably a little bit brash, you know. There's a bit of ego there, right? And definitely naivety, yeah. Right. If you're looking at your classic fantasy tropes, humans don't live anywhere near as long as many of the other races, and you know we're seen as being naive and stuff because vengeful god, loving god, yeah, like oh no, naivety, vengeful god, loving god, yeah. So we have that like that temperament where like we believe that the human god's like very prone to, if you get on his good side, like he's your greatest ally, but he's very temperamental and easy to annoy. I'm gonna add down here. We definitely want pumpkins as a subdomain, but like harvest, just in more like in a more general harvest. I was gonna say like fishing, but then for some reason the second I thought it, like I've got this idea in my head that it'd be cool to build a world where elves are like more ocean faring than forest. You know, you like really, because we're going heavy on tropes at the moment, right? Let's throw in a spanner. Let's have our. I mean, let me know what you think, but I like the idea of having like an ocean faring elven race, right? Ooh, it's so hard to. I don't know how long the delay is, but like when there's a reaction in chat, it's so hard to work out. Like, pirate elves. Yeah, I mean, you'd get like drow could be pirate elves, right? That'd be kind of cool. I like that. Pumpkins are short-lived like humans. Pumpkins harvest. Any other domains like, and obviously we can fill this out later on because we want the amount of domains for all these demigods to have to be like dozens, right? But if you've got anything, oh god, there we go. There we go. That's enough. I swear, and like this might just be me, but I feel like the amount of races there are in D&D now is just designed to make it harder to be a DM. Like lizard folk, come on, lizard. Yuan-Ti, can you be like a? I'm not gonna right. Lizard folk and Yuan-Ti are just like reptilian. Triton, I'm guessing Triton are merfolk. I've never encountered a Triton before. Triton. Triton are going to be a subdomain of elves. If we're sticking with the elvish at sea, Triton can be like a subdomain of elf. Ones who've chosen to live under the water instead of above it. I'm going to leave. So, because there's a lot of these, like, these lizard folk, right? Like, we can potentially have them fall under the like, have them fall under the umbrella of our like evil quote unquote god, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're evil, right? Like just how we would have followers of the not evil religions will be bad people, right? So if you can have a Yuan-Ti that's not bad, it doesn't have to mean that they don't follow the same god as the others. So, the lusty Argonian maid is definitely making an appearance in this world. Oh, Argonian. We can either make her an NPC or just have the book feature. Anyone got any subdomains for human? Right, I've got one. Right, and then I had a second and I kind of vetoed it because, like, I guess death maybe, right? But not like that's not necessarily a negative thing. Like the ferryman type, you know. Do we have copyrights? Lusty Argonian maid. I think the ship sailed on that one. Death. Let's youth as well, right? Because the humans are perceived to always be young, right? Youth. What else? What else do we? Yes, exactly. Yeah, jovial death. We have to die, and it makes the transition easier if you believe that there's if the god you've worshipped all these years is going to make the transition happen for you. Lovely stuff. But that also plays into our like vengeful good loving god like, you know, duality that we've got going on there. So I like that. Just seasonality, yeah. That's and like we're now like coming full circle, right? Because life and death, like youth and death, and like seasonality, just right. They're all intermingled in a lovely way that makes it seem like we thought about this from the start, right? Seasons shout transition, right? Like just any kind of like transition is so maybe like war as well, war and peace, right? Solstice. No, solstice. It's not. Oh, come on. No. Oh, just add it to the dictionary. It's a word now. I did not mean to do that, but we're sticking with it. Solstice is a word now. Kind of pagany, yeah. Like it would be a very, if you were a dwarf or an elf and you were hundreds of years old, then you'd look down on humans for being naive, right? That feeds into as well, like the idea that our religion is like more pagan than theirs. Like their religion's older and more developed and what have you, and ours is like naive and pagan, and like we're just slaughtering animals in the woods for plural. Kind of pagan, right? Dwarves. What do we want for a dwarven god? I wanna if we're going gendered, I want this one to be a female with like a great big bushy beard. Don't know how everyone feels about that, but like it's a very like dwarven, like tropey dwarven idea that like the female barbarian, like the strong warrior woman type deal. Oh, Goliath. Speaking of, bloody Goliath, right? Yeah, Valkyrie type. Yeah, yeah, yeah. She's we're gonna give her a name like Valkyra or something, because sometimes you got to be on the nose, right? It's fun to include little hidden secrets in your story and stuff for your players to discover on their own. But also sometimes, like, if you just hit them in the nose with it, then it helps them to like when you're on session 0 and you're showing all this to your players and they're trying to absorb, like, oh, by the way, I've spent the past like few weeks building an entire world for you to play in, and here's all this information at once. Like sometimes things that are on the nose. Like that's why I don't mind tropes, because it helps your players understand very quickly when they come into a game and you go like, we've got the dwarven god is called Valkyra, and she's got a great big bushy beard and carries a battle axe about, and she's all about strength and stuff. And you're like, oh yeah, I get that. Like that's very easy for me to understand without reading more into it. I could play a character that follows that god, and I feel like I could make decisions about my character without having to read like a pamphlet about your story. So she has not got a pumpkins, but strength and conviction, right? You know, like we're looking for positive spins on like dwarves are like dwarves are stubborn, right? But it's conviction. They're very very pious, right? I do love a dwarven cleric. Pious, piety, right? Extremes of emotion, yeah. Just emotion in general, right? Like when you feel a strong emotion, that's this god like flowing through you, right, and helping you to make a decision, like instincts, you know. Rationale. Is that rationale not the opposite of what we're maybe like? Dwarves don't often think things through, right? Like let's be instinctual and like believe our first judgment, right? So maybe judgment in general, right? Judgment, right? Law, all this kind of stuff. Like dwarves have a very rigid society, right? And they know right from wrong, and there's not much quarreling about, you know, right and wrong. It's, you know, straight away because you've got that conviction. So this one writes itself, right? Elves we're going to leave for now, because like yeah, follow the wall. But maybe, right? Maybe they have a particular fondness, right? Because we wanted like a water god, didn't we? Particular fondness. Because I've decided the seafaring. No one complained, so as a group we decided the seafaring, right? And we like the idea of pirate drow, right? They have a particular fondness for our Neptune, right? And I guess that would also be. Would it? maybe the sea's not gendered, right? Because like I'm thinking about like the changing of the tides and stuff. Maybe the sea can present itself in either gender, and it's like an optional. It can be either or none, right? Like depending on the day and the moon, right? Maybe it presents itself as a female during the night and a male during the day. I don't know. I'm gonna go for that. For the like the sea god, right? Yeah, changing of the tides. Ungendered. Tidal demigod, right? Tidal demigod. So maybe like maybe like we've got this confliction now. So maybe like the human god is because we're talking about harvests and like seasonality and stuff. Maybe that god's responsible for like slow transitions, whereas this one's responsible for like abrupt changes, right? So how the sea can how nautical folk will tell you that the sea can go from being calm 1 second to choppy the next, right? Abrupt changes, and then you have that like conflict of like, because we know that they're all part of one big thing, right? They work together on this stuff, and this might be an area where the two would meet, but there could be conflict between the two religions over who's responsible for what, right? Is something like does something change quickly, or does it not? Is it your god or mine, right? I like that. Less nature of the earth, trees, etc., more wind, seas, etc. Yeah, like forest elves is like I love elves and what have you. They're important, but and like they fit naturally in a wooded environment because of their like affinity with nature and stuff. But like the sea is just as natural as like woods, and if you think about the longevity of trees and stuff, there's things in the ocean that live just as long, right? So I like it. We're definitely going like we're definitely diving deep into that. I like that little spanner. Seafaring elves, earth and trees. Yeah, like winds because the winds change rapidly, right? Whereas like earth and trees are like a slow transition, and that's the human god doing his thing. Gnomes. I think. See, tell me what you think, but I feel like gnomes is like a natural, and like this might be like overplayed, but I feel like gnomes is like a natural place to have our like trickster type god, because they're just so unpredictable and like I don't know. We don't have to make our gnomes be like that, but I think generally when people want to play a gnome, they want it to be a Cadola Timbers, you know. They want to see. Shout out to Mike Brown. Yeah, they want to play like a lurky god. I'm gonna write that down as well because like you know lurky. Lurky, and I think like I don't think we assign a gender to Lurky at all, because like part of its identity is like a trickster is not to reveal any kind of information, right? Like if you know what gender it is, you know something about it, and like we've got a demigod here that like likes to be secretive, right? There's not much you can know about it, so like unpredictability. chaos but not evil, right? Yeah, like pranks, all that kind of jazz. Frivolity, yeah. And just general like fun, just general fun, disorder, right? And you'd say children that were behaving in a childlike manner, were being not possessed but like under the influence of this god. Yeah, it mentioned that plays like real well into like the player's handbook, right? Like your options for gnome classes, right? Like you can be a gnome tinkerer. Yeah, improvisation. And real good trickery, even though we know what we're doing there, right? Yeah, like not necessarily building crossbows, more like fireworks, like just stuff that's designed to cause a reaction in people, not a loss of blood, right? I feel like that's more a dwarvish thing, right? To like tinker to create something that's destructive is more like dwarvish. But in this scenario, maybe that's kind of a human thing, right? Like if our dwarves are like a more traditional like pickaxe, battle axe and shield kind of like, and we haven't been real pious and like, you know, more religious and stuff, then we can miss that like that tinkerer side of dwarves out, and it fits quite nicely into humans here. Like humans are naive and like they've come into a world that's well established, and we're young and foolish, and we like to cut trees down and make crossbows and stuff, and like the other races would think that that's just like, you know, what's wrong with a longbow? Been around for ages. Stuff can be misused, yeah. Like if you take a plunger off of a crossbow bolt and stick a barbed arrowhead on it, that's not a gnome's fault, is it? For halfling, halflings are always interesting because they kind of overlap a little bit with gnomes in that regard. Like you think of them as being like a little bit like mischievous and stuff. And I don't know if it's just the short, like you think of it, like it conjures images of children and stuff that like just playfulness and things. But we could go like a different direction, right? Like hobbits are very like introspective and what have you. They're like the opposite of like Tolkien hobbits are like not really playful. They're like very serious and like, you know. Ooh. So I'm working with a delay, but like I'm like, are you talking about having halflings still be that kind of like playful, mischievous? I like that. I like that a lot. Like we don't have to stick with the names, right? But like a twin god, but like the halfling one's more responsible. Yeah. What do you think? Like more like harmless pranks, and like our gnome god is like a little bit less responsible and like, yeah. Why? Yeah, like not necessarily like total opposites, but like opposites in that regard that like they both love fun, but like there's a difference between like harmless and fun and others. But yeah, like what there's a difference between uh like the difference between a whoopee cushion and like breaking the leg of someone's chair while they're sat in it. Right? I like that. Harmless pranks. but they love each other, right? They wouldn't they don't go anywhere without each other, right? Inseparable. I like that. And, yeah, and like you can create a conflict there between like halfling and gnome characters, where like they feel there's like a kinship there, where they feel because of their height and stuff that like they're all short people living in a tall person's world, and they're in it together. But like gnomes being a little bit over the top can give halflings a bad name, and halflings feel the need to like temper the gnomes a bit, and like yeah, like I like that. If you could have two characters in a party that like are a gnome and a dwarf, a gnome and a halfling that like play off each other really well, because like the halfling feels in some way responsible for like what the gnome does, even though they've never met each other before, right? You just got that instant relationship. Okay, I think that's fine. That says it all really. Orcs. So we can go down the path of, we've already talked about having like a god created from. Halflings do a lot of health and safety paperwork for gnomes. Yeah, but they fill out the paperwork with silly names like Seymour Butts, right? But they do the paperwork just in case anyone gets injured. Yeah, I'm gonna move Orc down. I'm gonna move Orc and Tiefling down to the end because my mouse is dying. So use your keyboard, pal. Life hack. The lusty Argonian maid, Dragonborn. Dragonborn are interesting as well, like because we've got. Do we want? This is Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, we're gonna have dragons, and it's important when you've got these like monsters that are almost like godly in power, right? How did they come to be, right? Like, are dragons like in the world because they've been put there by a god that has made a mistake, or are they there because there's an evil god, or are they just part of nature? Is it natural for entire villages to be trogdored, right? So have a think about that one. Important. It's an important word. Dragonborn. Do something I haven't done before. Dragons exist. Why do dragons exist? Right, because that's how we're gonna find like it's like baked into D&D that Dragonborn are like have dragon blood in them, right? And maybe the intention was always to make Dragonborn, and dragons were the mistake, right? That's a possibility. Or Dragonborn were the mistake, right? There's something here. There's something interesting for dragons. Like Game of Thrones has that the moon's a dragon egg nonsense. So like it's not awful. Was literally about to say it. Dragons came from experimentation. Yeah, the main evil god should be more mortal than God. This gives him a better understanding of how to coerce and twist mortals, but to his needs, but have less god powers. Yeah, like his powers come from being able to manipulate, like mortality as a whole is a pretty strong, like, is a force in and of its own, and being able to like manipulate that kind of gives you your own power. You don't need to be able to throw lightning bolts if you can manipulate cities to go to war, right? That's like I like that idea. Dragonborn. So dragons, we can have. Hang on. How about this? And this might just be because we're here, but maybe dragons were created by these two, right? Maybe dragons were going to come from an ancient race that created them and were then wiped out by the dragons. Interesting. How's this? How's this? Right? There's a race. There's a humanoid race, right? That are kind of governed by a god, one of our demigods, right? And that demigod was into pranks, right? And was into invention, right? And they, with the cooperation of their like humanoid race, manufactured dragons for banter, probably, right? But that was bad. Dragons got out, started breeding everywhere, and created a massive problem for the other races. So all the other demigods got together and said, what we're going to do about this trickster, right? He's an absolute nightmare. He's using his power to make dragons, and it's causing us all kinds of problems. They're flying around, trogdooring places up, burning it in all the villages, right? All the thatch roof cottages are up in flames, right? But this demigod is one of their kin, so they're not about ousting them, right? They're not going to kill it or get rid of it. Yeah. What they do is they halve its power. They split it into two different beings, right? And then you've got two demigods that used to be one god, right? And what happens to the race of humanoids? They get split in half too, and you end up with two short races, gnomes and halflings. Tell me if this is horrible, right? Who each have one of these half gods as their deity, or like one of these quarter gods as their deity, and like together they should make a whole, right? How do we like that? And then that's when you get like when the gods split, you get the not evil and good half, but like the more responsible half and the irresponsible half, because you split one being in two, and then you end up with halflings and gnomes, and they all still share that like affinity for trickery because they're from that place. And then Dragonborn exist because Dragonborn are basically descendants of that race that became halflings and gnomes, but they weren't entirely wiped out, right? They've existed underground or whatever, and have like at some point repopulated the world. But they're not inherently like evil or anything. They just have the blood of dragons. Boom. There we go. So then we've got a weird relationship between it's not something I've ever experienced before. We've got a weird relationship between gnomes, halflings, and Dragonborn as well, where like a Dragonborn is almost like in a metaphorical way is almost a halfling and a gnome in a trench coat, right? So let's go with it. So Dragonborn. So the Dragonborn don't actually have their own god in that sense, but they just worship dragons, right? They worship dragons because they see themselves in them. So we're calling them Loki and Lurker, right? Lurker used to be one. They created dragons. They created monsters that looked like they're like followers, right? Dragonborn. They created dragons with their Dragonborn followers. Split into 5. Pantheon in like quotations, to have their power. So they could never match up to one of the other gods, right? Have the power. This is where this is nothing like what I wrote up originally, and I love it. Where halflings and gnomes come from, and gnomes and gnomes. Halfling and gnomes come from. Boom. Dragonborn should be blamed for the actions of dragons and shunned in society. Yeah. This isn't like religion or but Dragonborn outcasts. You've got to have your outcasts, haven't you? You've got to have your like angsty race if you want to play like a moody sorcerer. Dragonborns are outcasts because of their heritage. And like people are okay with gnomes and halflings because they've paid their penance. When they're trying to reach the cereal on the high shelf, they're paying for the penance of their ancestors. I think if they were more feared by society, because you think few and far between. Outcasts. Is it like they're outcasts because of fear, right? Like, because these are all things as well. Like we'd be talking about ancient history, right? This hasn't happened 10 years ago. This is like different religions have a different story of how it went down, but like, what is the gods. If the gods aren't happy that Dragonborn exist in general, and they wanted them all to be split in two, then like seeing a Dragonborn still standing, that's like an affront to your belief system, right? It's like. And like that's not to say like Dragonborn characters wouldn't inherently be evil or anything. They just like they were born that way, and hating people for the way they look. Here we go. Now we're on real D&D tropes. Someone's got to be racist, right? And it's normally elves. Tabaxi. I don't know what Hannah thinks about this one because. She's real pro Tabaxi. We've kind of used like trickery here, and like we've got Dragonborns involved with that as well. So like always elves, man. It's always the elves. Why are they so racist? Not our elves though. Our seafaring elves are more like shanty, we're going with like a proper seafaring, sailor type. They're like the more I talk about this idea, the more I like it because like you've got that like idea of elves being like wise and old, right? And that plays into like the old seaman's tale of like, can I get some lols in chat for the word seaman? But like the old like sailors' tales and stuff, right? But like. It's actually coming from a place of truth because the elves are actually old and wise. They've got 1,000 stories to tell you about the sea, but it's because they've been there long enough. Tabaxi. We haven't got like a so we've got seaman. So we've got this delay is awful. We've got we haven't really got like a what. So we've kind of vacated like traditional elves now, which could be like a natural home for like a Tabaxi deity, right? Tabaxi are like humanoid cats, right? So the goddess schema, like they represent the natural world, right? In all of its like they represent like the food chain, right? like proper, like gritty green nature. So that's an option. We could go down the Skooma route for Skyrim fans. Any other ideas? We could have a yarn ball deity. You know, they follow a god that is a big yarn ball, and that's why they follow it, because they want to bat it. The god of knocking stuff off shelves. This is all awful. So like jump in when you have an idea. Well, the nature one wasn't awful, but Egyptian. Ooh. Turn the cat thing on its head. Turn the cat thing. I like that. Like so like you're thinking kind of sphinxy, like the like turning on its head by using a different trope, right? But like sphinxy, kind of like they like humans have like the transition to the afterlife, but tabaxi are the gate, right? The tabaxi deity is like the gatekeeper, right? I like that. Unless we have any objections, right? Gatekeeper for the afterlife. And like your cats can be very, instead of being like your more classic like knocking stuff off shelves, like chasing after string type of cats, you have that like more spiritual, like, you know, like and like banging on about Skyrim, but like Khajiit in Skyrim, like, or in Elder Scrolls in general, are very like they're quite severe in character normally, because they've gone through a lot of hardship, right? And like you can have this idea that like they may be the membrane between like the mortal and like the mortal world and the afterlife is particularly thin around Tabaxi, and they're prone to like having visions of like death and like seeing ghosts and stuff, right? That'd be quite interesting, and it opens a door for like like shamanic type. Like you could have like very spiritual like tabaxi who like are often like you'd often see them being like sorcerers and wizards and clerics and stuff, because they're like they've got that link to the afterlife. Oh yeah. So we're talking about the race now rather than like, but yeah, like spirituality, right? Spirituality and link to the afterlife. So like redemption and stuff as well. Like you get all these ideas of like, you know, ghosts wanting redemption and stuff. So like maybe it could be the deity of like redemption and like making peace and stuff, right? Like yeah, like that a lot. Firbolg, like that's, I think I'm pretty pleased with that. That's like, I like that. Big thumbs up to Robbie B for that. Was a very good. I like that, because I was going down a really like shaky path, you know. And also that frees up like, because we still don't have that more natural like druidic type like deity, which frees up like for Firbolgs, which is like a really good fit for Firbolg characters. Like they'll often be druids and stuff, like real like nature loving, like yeah. So I mean, unless we've got any objections, maybe the deity has some kind of control over time. Give the nature god to orcs. That's good. I like that. Where did orcs go? Did I put it on the bottom? Yeah, it's gone onto another page. Where are you looking? Oh my god, what's going on here? How long? When did this change? How long has it been like that? We're supposed to be looking at this so you can see what's going on instead of just my face. Nature is destructive. Oh my god. Oh. Teething props. Oh, I know why it is. Just give me 2 seconds. Give me 2 seconds. Feeling some time. Gonna do a bit of a dance. Yeah. How'd you like that? I'm just checking my hotkeys. So I've got some silly hotkeys set. Got some real silly hotkeys set. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We're doing it live. We're making changes live. We're doing it live. Talk amongst yourselves. No, I don't. I just want to get rid of that. Yeah, get rid of that. And scenes. You don't know what he's doing. Get rid of that. Done. Okay, we should stay on here now for some time. I thought it was an intentional view change. Yeah, well, that's a good sign because it means it was like seamless, right? And you're like, oh god, this guy's like, this guy's like. Can we read that as well? By the way, just gonna wait a few seconds, find out if you can read because I can do a bit of this. Look, whoa, whoa. If you wanna like, do you want big map or small map? Big map or small map? Put your answer in the chat, please. This delay is bonkers. Still got to do the furbolgs. Defo text on the right. Small map. Cheers, Rupert. This is like a first come first serve. Like this isn't a democracy. Small map. Yeah, that's good. It is a democracy. It is a democracy. Good. I should have. You can do like a straw poll and stuff. If I knew anything about streaming, I could have had like a straw poll, and you'd have voted, and we'd have got a quick answer, and then I would have gone with the most popular answer. Small map, small world, big plus. I'm not doing that. Let it never be said that this is the stream where you get exactly what you want, right? Mainly because I would have to like mess with stuff on the fly. Actually, do you know what? Let's get some practice in. If I open this, right? Let me know how horribly wrong this goes. I really don't want to be the big one, but it's what people are asking for. Let's not do that. Look at the map, isn't it really nice? And oh no, this is stupid because the writing's going to be small again. Wayo! Yeah, there you go. You've got what you wanted for like 2 seconds, right? And now we're going back to how it should be. Thank God for Control Z. Boom. There you go, Ali Scarlett. You got let it be said that sometimes it's the stream where you do get what you want. Right, where are we? It's a small map after all. Small map, big world. Big writing. Okay, alright. There's a lot of stuff that's not useful there. You can clip all this for YouTube. Actually, I've got. Let's take a little detour while I pour myself another cup of coffee. You'll all have noticed the intro video, right? With my glorious acting, where I read you an excerpt from A Wheel of Time. there's a lot of outtakes of that's a recording to let you peek behind the scenes because I was not reading that out live, and there's a lot of outtakes. So I could clip a few of them together for everyone's viewing pleasure. If you have any particular desire to laugh at me, then we can absolutely organise that. Right, furbolgs. Are we going with nature? Right, because I think that's like a nice fit, like natural. They're your more like circle of life. I'm writing it down, but you know we can change it if we want. But I think it's a nice fit, right? Circle of life. Like they're not like they're like that real practical like idea. Like they wouldn't be vegetarian or anything because like if it, like they see like the food chain as like an important part of nature, and like they love animals, but like that they wouldn't not eat them because they love them. Like they're like practical. I love trees and stuff, but there's nothing wrong with chopping one down to build a shelter because you need to live too, and you know they wouldn't salt the earth. The tree will grow back, kind of thing. Like practical. Circle, circle the polygon of life, right? Practical. The polygon of life, right? Practical. Unlikely to be vegetarian. They love nature, right? But believe it's there to be used. So I've kind of transitioned to like talking about racial traits, right? But it's kind of this is fine because this informs like it kind of works both ways. This informs like what our god is because, like we said, the way that the gods are perceived by the races is more important than what the gods actually are. That makes sense. Like we what the races that worship these gods imprint on those gods is what's going to inform our players' decisions, not and like the story decisions, not the truth behind it all. And that kind of goes back to what I said at the start, at the top of the stream, where I said like we don't have to know exactly how the world was created. It's nice to, but it's not actually essential because what's more important is what players believe and what the characters believe, and that's like what the races in your world believe is going to inform how NPCs and player characters act. So that's fine. We're kind of like we've transitioned a bit, but it's all the same thing, right? We can flesh this out as and when we want with like, and we're world building. We don't need to have all of the answers. We need a framework for. We're now into like the realm of practical DMing tips, right? You could spend months writing a story. You could spend decades writing the Lord of the Rings and then going, this is the world we're going to set our campaign in. You don't need to know that. You only need to, for session one, you only need to be able to answer the questions players are going to have on session one, right? So like what we've written here is actually perfectly, like I'm inclined to type it up a little bit better and like make it a bit more like digestible, but it's perfectly usable for a game because if your Furbolg character asks you about their god, you've got enough to improvise on the fly. You know, if they had a particular question about like anything, and like I can't think of one because I'm on the spot, but if a player wanted to be a Furbolg and had a question about this deity, you would probably be able to make it up on the fly, unless it was an awkward question, in which case your players should be fine with giving you a little bit of time to think about it. So there we go. Practical tip of the day. Rotary of Undeath. Polygon. Rotary of Undeath. Yeah, exactly. Rotary of Undeath. Cool. Turtles. Never played a game with a turtle in it. Presumably there's rules for turtles now. Like, I'd be very surprised if there aren't. Turtles. Do turtles live in the ocean? Do we like so perhaps this like perhaps they can share with the elves, right? Like our water god, right? We can maybe the turtle like follow the oceanid demigod, but they follow it more literally because the elves are more capable of creating and like the elves are more capable of like interpreting that god as a part of a bigger puzzle, but turtle like follow it. The further we go, the more they feel generic. Is that a bad thing? The further we get, the more they feel generic. Do we want to spice one up again? Like, I don't know. Like the Tabaxi one was pretty like non-generic, right? And then we've been a bit generic with Furbolg, and like maybe we could live in the sewers and worship the rat god of pizza and the ninjas. That's not awful. I mean, the races gods should maybe be. The further we get, the more they feel generic. Sorry, I mean the races gods. Oh my god, I don't understand what you're saying. I don't hate the sewers idea. We could actually have like a sub, like it'd be pretty cool to like have the like let's not be as like on the nose with this one, but like have turtles live like underground, right? Like we can make a rat people race of turtles. That'd be pretty cool. Like we just have our turtle like. Oh right, course, got you. Yeah. Like how like, I know like you want your players to be able to choose a turtle if they want to, but yeah, you kind of like we can be more generic. Yeah. I'm with you now. Yeah, like if you show up to a table and you've got 5 players who all want to be turtles, then more like that's great, but it's not going to happen very often. Turtles can be like assassins, and you know what? We're doing this. So like, so like, I'm thinking of like recycling, like I'm gonna put recycling, but like they live in the sewers, like they're living in like the filth of the world and stuff, but like they're probably like very practical and like they're kind of like your scrap heap scroungers of the like. Can we get a copyright check on scrap heap scroungers? Yeah, but yeah. I like the idea of being super on the nose, maybe. That's yeah. But like, I think you've got to. It's better if you're not. If you don't say Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? Like leave the pizza out of it, and like, yeah, like leave a couple of bits out. Like let the players work it out for themselves, right? The turtles live in the sewer. That's more than enough for people to make that like. That's on the nose enough without like punching it. Like oh god, there's a word in my head and it's not coming out. I do. My head words aren't coming out of my mouth hole. Like frugality, right? They're like like making do kind of thing, right? They're like very like they live a very like basic existence. Like they're happy with their lot in life kind of thing. Like they live in the sewers. Like if someone throws a pizza down there, then great. If they do it, then they'll make do. They'll make do and mend, right? Very like resourcefulness, right? Yeah, efficiency. Yeah, just general efficiency and like, and maybe just gratitude, like gratefulness. Like you can create this idea that like people probably look down on Tall because they live underground. Like you just have this like sewer people idea of them, and like they're like a base of form of life. Like they're lower than because they don't live in a city, right? Or like they wouldn't necessarily live underground. Maybe they live in swamps and stuff. But like you look down on them because of where they live, but they're actually more down to earth because they're more grateful of everything they have. I like that. I like the idea of like nomadic as well. Like just they settle down wherever. Sewers are great because like they can stay out of the elements and stuff. And like, but they're more than happy to live in like swamps and stuff. I like it. See, we're already all we've talked about so far is religion, and like because we've assigned parts of our pantheon to like different races, we've actually like created quite an interesting world, right? Already for players to explore, and we've barely even begun, right? We're an hour and 36 minutes into this stream, right? And we've already got like the basis of quite an interesting like environment for people to play around in. So good job, team. Appreciate all your input. And like it just goes to show how not easy, but like how it shouldn't be intimidating for people. Like it's like a lot of what we said could be interpreted as silly as well, right? But like we're having fun and what have you, and like we're actually creating quite an interesting campaign setting. So love it. Drow. so we could have I think I said earlier about the idea of the drow like being like worshipping our evil god, right? But let's really like go into the pirate thing that like I think Rob said. Like we can have a god that's not necessarily evil but believes in like plundering and like like I say I like a lot. Entitlement, kind of, right? Entitlement. And just roguery in general, right? Like Drow don't have to necessarily be evil in our campaign setting. They can just be on like on that Han Solo side of the law, right? They got the stick it to the man the Ursus, right? Roguery. Yeah. Moral ambiguity, right? What's immoral, right? Living outside of the law isn't necessarily immoral if you don't believe that the laws are godly. Yeah. Immorality, yeah. Like the laws of the land weren't created by the gods; they were created by men in towers, right? So, should they are they necessarily for us to stick to, or is there wiggle room? the god of wiggle room, right? Smooth talking Goliaths. Goliaths, just your classic meatheads. They read the Magna Carta. Stop. They know their rights. I don't consent. I don't consent to your laws. Therefore, nothing I do is illegal. God of boys. Goliaths don't have religion. Yeah, I've been thinking this the whole way down the list. Is like, do we have one that's just, you know, that doesn't mean that the gods don't care about them, but they're like, you know, they're would they be atheists? They wouldn't. Would they be atheists or just completely ignorant? I think just ignorant. Just ignorant of religion. Because we're just saying, like, we're not putting our players in a box. If you want to create a Goliath that is religious, that's great. Like, we like to create these situations where there's corner cases, because if you say to your players Goliaths aren't religious, and someone says, but I want to play a religious Goliath, you're not saying you can't do that. What you're actually saying is, if you need to come and give me a reason why, right? And then you're forcing them in session 0 to be responsible for creating like a backstory and stuff, like to think about the motivations of their character. So if you know, you explain to them that you would have grown up in a nomadic tribe that was completely like ignorant of religion, for what reason has your character found religion? And if they can give you a reason, then like, great. They've immediately invested into a character more than people might do at the start. Maybe they understand. Oh yeah, like so. How about there's the idea that all a god is just a really powerful being, right? And their tribal leader is more powerful than they are. So presumably there's other Goliaths that are more powerful than their tribal leader. And if you keep going up that ladder, you end up with a Goliath that is as powerful as a god, right? All a demigod is to them is a creature that's won enough fights to be considered a god, right? What do we think of that? Like, they understand that there are more powerful creatures out there than them, but that they're only more powerful because they've fought their way there. And there's a path there for any Goliath that wants to take it to become powerful enough to be a god. There's just no like, yeah, we're like that. Not ignorant. So we're not ignorant of religion. We understand. But don't see it. Don't see a separation between. Don't see a separation between a demigod and a really powerful warrior. If you work hard, if you fight hard enough, you can get there, right? Aarakocra. I don't know what Aarakocra is. I thought they were bird people, but Kenku are bird people, aren't they? We're getting into like the we're gonna if that's the case, we're grouping them together, I think, right? Oh yeah, like yeah. So they're proper. Kenku are like can only. Oh, I thought Kenku are like cursed folk, right? Aarakocra. So like this is like a proper bird person. Bird people, eagle lords. bird persons. Edgelords. Edgelords. They're the trolls of the. They like to fly up high and shit on caravans, right? Because it's funny to mess with people. I think I'm doing this, by the way, because Rob said this earlier, and I kind of agree with him. I like the idea that Furbolg and Orcs share the same deity, like because orcs inherently are like very naturalistic, right? And it's just the difference between a player character orc and a like monster manual orc is just that one is more civilized, right? Like one's able to control its aggression and stuff. So, yeah, yeah. Aarakocra's the only one that I don't know at all what it is. But now that I've seen a picture of it, oh yeah, I have seen them. Just like we get into the maybe we should have done all these first, but we get into the supplement stuff. Right? They live by the Lucha Libre code. This is like a proper homage to Dan. But we could have like we could make them once courageous warriors. Make it so, yeah. Like I kind of so we can adapt that idea to like like they used to be a noble race, right? And now they're like because they haven't adapted to like modern fighting and weapons and stuff. They're kind of a joke kind of thing because they haven't adapted to modern warfare. Right, they're proud of their like wrestling heritage. So what would a god be for that? So how about the I'm gonna use the word like human form, right? It's the god of like a bodybuilding god kind of thing, but less cringy, I guess. Like the idea of perfection in Ric Flair, the idea of reaching your form's max potential, right? Like personal aspiration, right? The pursuit of maybe there's a little bit of ego here as well, right? Gobbledygooker. Gobble gobble. Yeah, I don't mind that. So they're like an ancient warrior race, right? Who've since been conquered over and over again, right? They have no home. They have no there's nothing left of what used to be like what would have been their empire. They have no historic home anymore. Right. So their god kind of represents like a quest for former glory, right? Like part of their like aspirations for personal perfection is that they want to get back to where they were, and they feel like being the best version of themselves will help them the head of the race, cats. Leadership is designed. Is defended monthly in arena fights. Yeah, like and yeah, all of this stuff, right? Like there isn't a hierarchical structure anywhere because they don't have their own cities, but they form like communities within larger cities, and they would have like a leader of that little community. Like they live like I can see them living in the slums of a city, and in that slum they would have like a council and a council leader type thing, and they all the god of bro lifts, yeah, and they do you even lift their way to being the leader of that little community. I like it. Asimar. I don't know if that's a terrible idea, but I kind of like it. Like there's definitely something to. I think this is one of those ideas that'll seem terrible at first, but when you start writing it into a story, if you get a player that wants to be an Aarakocra, it would actually create quite an interesting set of circumstances for a hero to arise, kind of thing. Asimar. I actually see Asimar are always a weird one because they're kind of they've got that fallen angel kind of thing going on, and I'm not sure if that should tie directly into the faith system in and of itself. How about this? What do we think of? We've created this scenario where our demigods cover like a pantheon of a plethora of domains, right? So, is it possible that Aasimar exists as like a shard of a god, right? And they don't like your player playing an Aasimar wouldn't realize it, but they would actually represent a small part of one of the gods. Because I'm leaning towards that. I'm kind of conscious that we're running into time here, and I don't want to make bad decisions because we haven't got much time left. But I don't think that's necessarily a god. Yeah, exactly. And it would be part of their story to try and rediscover what part of the domain they're supposed to be, because placing them all around to keep their order. So kind of that can kind of be like the same story, right? That where one of the demigods has neglected one of their parts of their domain, it creates this fracture, and whether that's by design or it's because our overarching god as a whole has decided to splinter off that responsibility because they're not looking after it, and then Aazimar's created, and it's the purpose of that Aasimar to they're put on Earth to gain an understanding of how other species live, so that they can put their knowledge to use to govern that domain. They're kind of on a path to ascension kind of thing, and when they ascend, they can then take responsibility for that thing, and they would maybe be created by advancement and technology and stuff. Where if you want to really dissect everything, maybe originally no one would have been responsible for trade because trade wasn't a thing, and then as civilizations developed and trade becomes a thing, it's someone needs to be responsible for this because it's becoming a wider part of society. So then a fracture's created, and you get an Aasimar that's then on a quest, like on a personal mission to ascend and then become the domain deity of trade. I like that. Splinters of bit of that. Ganassi. Ganassi are like elemental genie type, like. And I think that they should probably just be that, right? Maybe there isn't a god for. Tell me if I'm being lazy, but maybe there isn't a deity for them. Maybe they are actually of the earth, right? In theory, their deity would be the overarching god, right? But they worship themselves. Yeah, they could like they could do. They could very well understand that they're above worship because they exist as a sentient part of the world, right? Yeah, man. They're above worship. I like that. Yeah, they like. I like it. It's above worship. In theory, their deity would be lazy. But yeah, but whatever. Don't even need a but. What Roostplus said. Yeah. What I said. So Tiefling, and like I moved these to the bottom on purpose because Tiefling like have made a pact with like a devil, right? So this kind of leads us to like our last point, which is we've already kind of decided, right? We want there to be an idea that like the gods can like breed in a sense. They can divide and subdivide themselves with each other to create other like domains and stuff. And at some point there was something went wrong, and we created an almost non-god demigod. Like we've created a demigod that has almost no power compared to the other demigods. But in reality, what has occurred is we've created like an anti-god that has like is able to influence mortals, right? Like earth dwellers kind of thing. And that's where they're like their power isn't understood by the other demigods, right? They think it has no power, but actually its power is potentially greater than. If it has the power to manipulate all of creation, then what? In theory, it has equal power to the pantheon, right? If that's where we're going, I think that's sort of where we've like circled around it a few times, but I think that's kind of where we've ended up. And Tieflings have made some sort of deal with this other entity, right? And I like the idea that like if this demigod was to manifest itself, it's like a smoke and mirrors type thing. Like it doesn't have a physical form. It's all suggestion and like thoughts and things. Like it'd come to you in a nightmare and dark, real edgy stuff, right? So we have like an anti. And we can decide on how it came to be at a later date, right? Because it might be that when we world build, like further down the process of world building, we find a natural place to say, oh, maybe this is where the anti-deity came from, right? So I think we'll go with that. Was somehow born of the demigods. Demigods hasn't the same powers as themselves, but has a remarkable affinity with life, with more life, morals, right? And it can use that for pernicious deeds. Can we get a trademark check, a copyright check on pernicious deeds, please? What do we think? I've got a bit of silence here because I'm just waiting for yeah. So I think we've had a good. Most importantly, we've decided that the lusty Argonian maid is going to feature at some point in our world, right? But 2 hours, right? We've sat down, 2 hours, a little bit of back and forth. You probably could, doing this alone probably would be even quicker, right? But I don't think the result would have been as good because we've had quite a lot of input and stuff. So I think this is a good session one, right? What about Argonians? Argonians are Dragonborn, mate. Come on. Argonians are just... And also we had all the lizard people. Who were all in, kobolds and stuff as well, right? The lusty Dragonborn maid. Lusty Dragonborn maid. Yeah, so... Session 1 is in the books. Well done, people. I'm going to try and do some work this week to make this. I'm going to do a bit of typing up and neating in this document up, and I'm going to make it publicly accessible, but probably not editable, right? So people that you at home can have a look, and at any point in this process, maybe 10 weeks down the line, we've got enough for you to use for planning a session. And you'll be able to just access the document, download it, print it, or whatever, or save it and make changes to it yourself. But yeah, I think that's a pretty successful session 1. You can see we've gone from sitting down and having almost no idea where we're going with this to just by looking at religion in the world, we've already created quite an interesting backdrop for our story. This isn't going to be the be all and end all of our campaign story. But when we're making decisions later on, we're going to find it a lot easier to decide how NPCs are going to act, and maybe when we want to create a central tension for the story. There's so many conflicts of interest and stuff in the Pantheon that we're able to use those conflicts to inform the idea of a central tension. If we wanted there to be a war between races, it'd be very easy to pick 2 races and work out why they were at war just by looking at the conflicts of interest in their religions. Because in a typically medievalish society, right, religion is going to be at the heart of any kind of dispute, and this is the bread and butter of what people are thinking, right, and how they act. Is informed largely by their belief system. So, good job, everyone. Thanks. Big thank you to everyone who participated. You know who you are. If this is your first time viewing, thank you for coming. Next week, we are going to have a teaser for next week. The plan for next week is to start now with we talked about this idea of starting outwards and working inwards, right? We've got religion, and we'll probably start off quickly by going through all of these gods and giving them some names, right? So have a think about that throughout the week. If you've got any good ideas for names, like write them down. We'll have a little bit of a like back and forth at the start of the stream, and we'll throw some names down for these demigods, right? But the plan for next week is to then move down to society. So we've got a map. We've got a rough map for the world, and we're gonna use this one, right? And hello everyone, because oh god, that's sad of me because Mike Blizz isn't here, and we saw the little Mike Blizz. We've got a rough map, okay, and we now know the belief system of our various races in the world, right? So we're now going to start to use that information to create some societies, and like I said, we potentially there'll be wars and stuff down the line, but we can use that information to inform how our societies will be, because there's so many. Like we'll create a city, and we'll decide what mix of races the population is, and then that'll inform what mix of religions exist, and where we put it on the map will inform what the trade is, right? And there's so many decisions then that start getting made by themselves, and everything just starts to piece together. We'll put a city down, and because of where it is, it'll primarily be like an agricultural city, and because it's primarily agricultural, we'll decide it's like 60% human, and then we know that it's 60%, like roughly 60% of the population would follow our human god, right? And that would help us to decide what the nobles of the area are like and what sort of relation they have to the next city across. And when we've got their like ethnicity and religious background, we'll be able to like form relationships between those cities to work out how those cities interact with each other, right? So yeah, we're going to look at society is session 2, and it's one true god should be called Milady. Well, yeah. So that's an interesting point that I'm going to try not to derail the end of this stream with, but like we would have situations where certain gods have multiple names, because if you have humans who follow the Dwarvish god, they might have a different name for her than the Dwarves, because they will have originally had a different language that they used to name that god. So, like, it's quite an interesting little wrinkle that you get when you're working with but that comes into society. So it's all. We'll find that if you often have dwarves next to humans, then you might then decide that there are quite a lot of humans that follow the dwarvish religion, for instance. So that is next week. We're going to take a look at some of these cities and start to plan out who lived there, what do, and why, and all these other questions. So have a look at the map, have a think about the demigods. Think about any names that you want to include. Maybe you want to try and get your own name on the map somewhere. And yes, additional bit of admin that I forgot to mention at the start of the stream. I said last week that I'd be streaming at 3 p.m. this week, and over the week it's just become apparent that 6 o'clock is just a better time. So I will endeavour to always be 6 p.m. on Sundays from here on out. So until further notice, that is the schedule. So yeah, that's this week. Thank you all for coming. I look forward to talking about societies with you next week. And yeah, I think that's everything. Same bat time, same bat place. I'll see you there. Same channel. Thank you all for coming out, and I'll see you next week. Have a wonderful week. And yeah, I'll see you then.